I am not a licensed professional. Any views and or opinions expressed in this show are those of the speakers and do not reflect the bariatric community as a whole. Always reach out to a professional with any medical issues you are experiencing. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Unzipped with Sherry with yours truly. Obviously, I'm Sherry. Wanted to say thank you again so much to Jennifer last week, who came in and gave us an update on her surgery. She is now 1 month post-op and is doing really well. And we'll be having her again probably in the next month or two for another update. But as for this week, I'm really excited because we have Paige, who had surgery this year in April. She's had an incredible transformation, and we're going to be talking about everything that she's been going through, the ups, the downs, the good, the bad, and everything in between. And so on that note, Paige, I hope you're ready because we're about to get unzipped. We all have a story on how we got here, right? So for me, I used to be over 350 pounds until one day I made the single decision that I wanted change. Weight loss surgery has saved my life, and now I am here for you. I want to hear your story.
You know, the one that happened during that before and after picture? It's time to unzip. What's your story?
Well, hello, beautiful. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. First and foremost, thank you so much for taking time out of your day today to be on my little show. I'm very excited. Paige and I met recently through TikTok, doing like some lives, and I loved hearing about her story. I've seen some of your before and after pictures, which were just absolutely incredible. And what I was interested by too is that you have a very unique story that I thought a lot of people can really benefit from. And I'm sure that there's a lot of people out there who can relate to it as well. So I wanted to bring you on the show and have you tell us all about your journey and your story and everything in between. So again, thank you so much for being here today. And I thought we can start a little bit with your origin story. What was life like before the surgery when you were growing up? Like, was it something where the weight was always an issue, or did it come on later on?
It's a little bit of a mix of both. I was always taller and just weighed more, and I had like bigger shoe size than everyone in my grade. And in the late 90s, to my mom, that meant that I was fat. And Weight Watchers had an age limit, so she signed up for Weight Watchers as a size 4 and took me, a second grader, to learn about health with her. But when we weighed, I was the one getting on the scale.
Interesting.
And I was almost my mom's height by that point.
So, really? In second grade?
Yeah. My mom's 5'2" and I'm 5'11". So
Holy
I passed her in height when I was in 4th grade.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that obviously meant that you were fat, of course.
Yes.
You were taller.
And I mean, I was a little bit chubby, but I wasn't fat by any means. I mean, I was still considered normal BMI, or like maybe a little bit over normal, but nothing crazy. But my mom had a lot of mental health problems. And after my parents divorced when I was in 2nd grade, she would spiral into bouts of depression. And when she was in those, she would just quit grocery shopping, and she would through on her way home and get food for her, but for me or my brother. And so, or she would stop and get stuff for him and her, but not me, and stuff like that. So there was a lot of food insecurity. And then when I was 16, I got my first job and I had money, and so I could buy whatever food I wanted. And that just kind of continued on into, my adulthood. And then I experienced a couple years in my adulthood where I was so poor that I would eat all the condiments in my fridge until all the condiments were gone, and then I just wouldn't eat.
Wow.
And so then I had food insecurity again. So when I anytime in my life I have had money and I have been able to just get my own food, I did. And it didn't matter what it was. Like, if it sounded good to me, I got it. And
And
that kind
what
of contributed to a lot of weight.
And what sucks too is something I didn't realize that you and I kind of had in common is now I didn't end up being 5'11", but I ended up being 5'7". But I remember when I was like 12 years old as well, I was in junior high, and you do like the fitness test or whatever, where they measure your height and your weight. And they said I was fat. I think I was like 130 pounds. And that's a lot for somebody who's like 12 years old, 11 years old.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like 4'11" at the time. So I understand how that can be construed as, there's a weight issue. But what happened was, like, a year later, I shot up to 5'7".
Mm-hmm.
And what I've learned, and I don't have kids yet, but one thing that excuse me, I've seen with like my nieces and nephews is you kind of get like a little pudgy right before a growth spurt. And I think back then, we didn't know about that. So people attribute, like, oh, she's getting fat, we need to start putting her on a diet, or him on a diet. And then you have like this growth spurt. But I think what's happening is you're messing with our young metabolisms.
Yep.
And when you're starting this diet culture at a young age, your body doesn't know what to do, because you need that food, because you're getting taller. And then, like you said, like what's unfortunate is being in that kind of an environment where food has become scarce. And now you just went from like basically starving yourself, your hormones, your metabolism is getting out of whack. And then your body's like, I don't know when I'm going to eat again. So even if you probably had smaller portions, your body's like holding on to everything, because they're like, we don't know we're going to eat again.
Yeah.
And then I was the same as you. We didn't have soda in my house. We didn't have like a lot of junk food. So when I got a job and I started having money, I'm like, wait, I can have Cocoa Pebbles like whenever I want, and I can go and have ice cream and McDonald's and all of these foods, and you go from like one extreme to the other.
Well, and too, with my mom's mental health stuff, we'd go from not having any food in the house for a couple months, and my dad like putting food outside our bedroom windows so that in the middle of the night we could open up our window and sneak food into a cooler that was hidden in our closet.
Really?
To my mom, in one of her manic phases, would go and just buy all the kid cuisine and the chips and the pop and the fruity cereals, and you can have whatever you want. But then, that would last for 2, 3, 4 weeks if we were lucky. And then you spiral back down into 2 months of, are you going to get to eat? And the only food that you were guaranteed is whatever you got at school.
And so I think it's safe to assume that when you go through like such these drastic changes, I'm going to assume that weight was an issue for basically from that point forward.
Yes. Like even when I did have access to food, I would either eat all the time and just eat anything that I wanted, or I would, honestly, I mean, even to this day, I go through times where I just forget to eat. Like, I'm neurodivergent too, and sometimes there have been times where I've sat there and I'm like, oh, I feel kind of hungry, and I'll think about it, I'm like, well, I haven't eaten in 32 hours or 36 hours. I'm like, that's why I'm hungry.
Yeah. That would happen to you even before the surgery, right?
Oh yeah. No. Like, even before surgery, it would not be unusual for me to get like focused in on something and for 8, 10, 12 hours to go by before I even looked up at a clock and was like, oh man, I've been here for hours and I haven't gone to the bathroom. I haven't had anything to drink or eat or anything. And that's been pretty regular throughout my entire life.
And then as like you were growing up, did you ever like recognize that there was a problem there, or is it because you were just so accustomed to it for so many years, there was like an element of normalcy to it?
I don't think I ever really thought that I had a problem with like my eating or food or anything like that until I was probably like 25 or 26.
Okay.
And at that point, I'd been with my now husband for a couple of years, and I noticed that sometimes it wasn't like I wasn't hungry. We had food at the house, everything like that. I wasn't like sad. I would just, when I was bored, and it was really just boredom, I would go in the middle of the night while he was asleep. If I couldn't sleep, I would just go to a drive-thru. But I'd buy a lot of food. And then I would go home and I would just kind of slowly work on eating the food for a couple of hours while I watched something on TV mindlessly. Because, I mean, that was the other thing about like growing up is we never until I was 14, we never ate at a table. Until I moved in with my dad, we never ate at a table. It was, my mom, if she did cook, would dish up our plate of food, give it to us, and we had to sit in front of the TV to eat it. So I never learned like self-regulating when I'm full either. It was,
Right.
if you don't eat all this, you're gonna be hit or something like that.
Right.
But you didn't get to dish yourself up, so it was eat whatever you're given.
Right. And I don't think people realize how dangerous it is, one, to eat in front of the TV, because we don't realize how much we're consuming because we're distracted by whatever is being played.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was growing up, I was blessed in the sense that we did eat at the table. It was the same thing. You're going to eat what I'm feeding you.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to finish your plate or you're not allowed to leave the table. And then it got to a point where, like, my husband and I, when we were together, we were always sharing rooms, or like we were always renting rooms in a house. So there was no dining room table to eat. So we would go to get fast food, and then you're sitting in front of the TV,
Yep.
and then all of a sudden there's chips and there's sodas and you're eating it really quick. And it wasn't until literally, I think like a couple weeks ago, we were getting ready for Thanksgiving. I brought a table out into our little dining room because we still to this
Mm-hmm.
day we're eating in front of the TV. And ever since we've been eating at the table, we're both noticing a difference. Because like if you want more food, you have to physically get up, you have to go make yourself another plate. But then once the food's off your plate, like I'm not even thinking about it because you're actually forced to have conversation, not forced to have a conversation,
Yeah.
but you're having a conversation with each other. You're not distracted. You're not mindlessly eating like before. So I
Yeah.
do think that there's a huge benefit to that. So at one point, did you decide, did you recognize that number one, that there's an issue, and then number two, I need to do something about it?
I started having, like, I've always had some GI issues, but I started having some issues with my knees back in like 2016, 2017. And that was kind of around the time that I'd gotten my first like big girl job that had health insurance. So I looked into it then because I mean, I've always been so poor that like even going to Mexico and spending a couple $1,000s has always been out of reach.
Right.
But I looked into the insurance I had at that job, and since they used a small local insurance company that only serves like a 4-county area. And so they said, no, we don't cover bariatric surgery. Absolutely not. And I just kind of said, okay, and moved on from that. And then in 2018, I had a neurologist tell me that he wouldn't treat me unless I had bariatric surgery.
And
For neurological.
What was his reasoning for that?
His reasoning was that a study in the early 1980s had said that the condition I'd been diagnosed with could be related to weight. And so he contributed everything that was going on with me to me being fat. And in his words, attention seeking. So he said he wouldn't treat me unless I had weight loss surgery. And I was like, well, my insurance doesn't cover it. Like I looked into it at the clinic there, and they told me $26,000. And I was like, I don't have $26,000. I'm sorry. Yeah. And so I was referred to a different neurologist who didn't believe that my condition was real and said it was just hysteria and women wanting attention from their spouses, and told my spouse who was in the room with me that he needed to give me more attention so that I'd stop pretending to be sick.
Okay, what is it with doctors with this complex? Like that number one, they always blame weight for everything. It's like the number one cause of anything. Like there could be other issues. And what happened to just listening to your patient and working with them and finding a solution instead of they're the ones who are victimizing you, I feel like.
Yeah. I mean, legitimately, I've talked to a couple of people, and apparently in a lot of medical schools are still teaching that if a person is obese, that is 99% of the time going to be the cause of all their problems. So taught that, and so they're taught fat phobia in school, which is a problem of it in and of itself. But also a lot of them just my particular issues are rare conditions. And so people were just kind of operating off the medical knowledge they'd had when they went to medical school in the 70s or the 80s, and want to look at any of the current research.
which is so and like, I feel like for many of us, it creates like this, I don't want to say a fear to the doctor, but it creates like this level of distrust. And that was one of the issues that I had for years. Is I was the same as you. Is I used to have a lot of knee pains, even at like 18 years old, which could have been a multitude. I wasn't 300 pounds then, but I was probably in the 200s. I was a size 16 at 18. And the doctor's main response was, well, you're fat. And then you
Yeah.
cry because the doctor is like, you put these people on pedestals because you trust them, like they're going to fix you. And then when they call you names, like it makes you cry. And then all of a sudden now you're depressed, and now I need to put you on antidepressants and pain and things to cover the pain. And I'm like, why are we not getting to the root of the issue? I'm not saying that I'm not fat. Like, yes, we need to
Yeah.
lose like a couple of pounds, but is it possible that maybe something else is going on?
Well, and the other thing is like, I mean, yes, I was fat and everything like that, but all of my like labs, everything else, like my blood pressure, my heart rate, everything else, like other than the fact that my blood sugars were a little bit elevated, nothing crazy, just,
Right.
maybe like 2% above like where they'd want to see them. But like other than that, all my labs and everything else was perfect the whole
Right.
time. And what got me more than anything was that like what was going on with me was very clearly neurological. Like it was all neurological and everything like that. I get, how weight can affect migraines, like it puts, more strain on your muscles and stuff. I was like, but that is specifically for like tension migraines. I was like, which
Right.
is not the type of migraine I'm having. So why are we focusing on my weight? And I would be lying if I said that a small part of me didn't have the surgery out of spite for these two doctors who just said it was my weight and I was being hysterical.
Right. And then so from the time that you were diagnosed in 2018, correct?
I was diagnosed with IIH and hemiplegic migraines in 2018.
Okay, I'm not going to try to say that 3 times fast. What is IIH?
IIH is idiopathic intracranial hypertension. Basically, I have too much spinal fluid in my skull.
Okay.
They're not sure whether it's an overproduction or an under under recycling it, because your body recycles your spinal fluid every like a couple times a day usually.
Okay.
So they don't know if it's just that I'm not recycling it as fast as I'm producing it, or if I'm just producing way too much. That's what the idiopathic means. It's unknown cause, but otherwise, it's just way too much spinal fluid in my skull, so it puts too much pressure on my brain and my optic nerves. So it can
Okay.
like cause you to go blind if it's left untreated, and it can cause like some brain damage, and you have some like mental impairment and stuff like that.
And then what was the other one? I'm not even going to try to pronounce it.
Hemiplegic migraines. It's a rare type of migraine. Sometimes they're also called complex migraines.
Okay.
But basically, when I have those, I'll get really confused and my speech will slur, and the entire left side of my body goes numb. So my face will go numb and droop. It'll look like I'm having a stroke. My arm will usually go completely numb.
Wow.
And like I won't be able to hold on to anything or like articulate I can like move my arm a little bit, but I can't do anything that requires like fine motor skills or like grip anything. And I can't ever feel my left leg, but I can usually still move it. Sometimes if it's a really bad one, or I've had like 4 or 5 that day already,
Right.
then I won't be able to move my leg either.
Now, is that similar to like the TI strokes that I've heard? Like little mini?
Actually, the first 3 times I had them, my husband, of course, took me to the emergency room because it's all the signs and symptoms of a stroke.
Right.
And all 3 times I was immediately taken back as a level 1 trauma at the emergency room, which is like the most critical. And they're like, this person's stroking. And after all the tests, they were like, well, we thought you were having a TIA, but it's not. It's just a complex migraine. But every time I ended up in the hospital for 4 or 5 days.
And do they think, okay, question 1, do they know what causes it? Is it something that's like more genetic, or
genetic?
Is it?
It's, yeah, I mean, everything we can tell from him, especially hemiplegic migraines, there's two types. It's called familial or sporadic.
Mm-hmm.
Mine is called sporadic because nobody in my family before me had it. If anybody else had had it before me, it would have been familial. However, if I were to ever procreate and have children and they had it, then theirs would actually be familial because
Okay.
I had it. I'm not having kids, but that's how it would work.
Right. Now, did the doctors think that these issues were exacerbated with obesity, or did they think that there was a correlation between the two?
Nobody's ever tried to link my migraines to my weight, but they have tried to link the IIH to my weight.
Okay.
That's what they were operating off of the like 1980 something study saying,
Right.
because it basically was a study that now we know was very biased against fat people, but it basically said that, 80% of people are magically cured if they just lose 10% of their body fat.
Right.
So I did lose 10% of my body fat and I didn't get any better. I was still getting worse. So that's when I had the shunt surgically implanted because diuretics weren't working. I'd had like 18 lumbar punctures at that point in 5
Oh my
months
God.
just to drain off extra spinal fluid. And every time they went to drain off extra spinal fluid, lumbar puncture kits come with a set of tubes that they can fill up.
Mm-hmm.
And every time they were having to go get like urine sample cups to drain off more fluid because the tubes that came in the kit didn't hold enough.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, so walk me through. So the insurance that you had at the time wouldn't cover bariatric surgery. So
Correct.
was it that you had ended up getting another job?
No, actually, I after I'd gotten sick, I was in and out of the hospital with the IIH, and I kept having to go to the emergency room to get spinal fluid drained off and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And I was on a lot of diuretics and in pain every day. And I had a shunt surgery, so I had a shunt surgically implanted to drain the fluid from my brain to my abdomen. And it worked really well for about a month, and then it quit working. And so I went through a whole bunch of testing, and they basically determined that they thought it was defective.
Okay.
So I was going to have it replaced, which means another surgery.
Awesome.
And my work at that point was like, hey, you've exhausted all of your FMLA, and they let me exhaust all of the leave I was allowed under the Americans with Disabilities Act, in addition to my FMLA, which they didn't have to. They could have just overlapped them and said,
right.
But they were really great. But the day before my second brain surgery, they were like, I'm sorry, we really have to have you resign. I was like, that's fair. Like, I've missed so much work. So I've actually not been able to go back to work since then.
Right.
I am fully disabled. And I spend probably a good 70-80% of my time in bed.
Okay. And then I'm assuming it was like a Medi-Cal kind of thing?
I have Medicaid through my state for being disabled, but they don't cover bariatric surgery either. When I was finally awarded disability, because it took 2.5 years to be awarded disability.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that was actually relatively quick. Like the time frame is usually 2 to 5 years to if you win, and like less than 20% of people actually win. But once I got Medicare does pay for bariatric surgery.
Okay. And then what was your thought process going into having the surgery? Because like you've already had like multiple surgeries, like you're now technically disabled. I can't even envision like what your mindset is like during this time. Like it has to be so defeating.
Honestly, like it's something I had wanted to do before I got sick.
Right.
And everything like that, just because there was a lot of stuff that I couldn't do. I mean, and even if I could do it, like it took a lot of like planning and everything else. And so it had already been on my radar. And when I found out that I could get it covered, I was just like, okay, I'm going to do this. Like, if nothing else, it'll help with some of my back problems that I have now from having so many lumbar punctures, and it'll help with my knee pain and all this stuff. And I mean, like I said, a little bit of it was, and I'm going to lose the weight and I'm not going to, I was like, and based on research, I mean, there's like less than a 10% chance that it was going to improve anything.
Right.
I was like, so I'm going to do it and I'm going to prove all these doctors wrong. And then I'm going to send them an email with my before and after stuff and be like, listen here.
Now
Of
you
course,
can
now
take me seriously.
they both retired this year after I had surgery.
Can we find out what their emails are and send it to them anyway?
Oh, I can still find out where they live. I mean, internet sleuth is not that hard. They're both super old.
Which is true. So I'm curious. So you ended up having 2 surgeries.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so when you had, because you had the bypass,
Mm-hmm.
and compared to the others, what was the recovery like for the bypass compared to what you had already gone through?
Honestly, I had kind of gone into the bypass with the idea of, well, I've already been through 2 brain surgeries. Like, this will be a cakewalk,
Right. That's what I
compared to
think.
the brain surgeries. But it turns out your brain doesn't really hurt when you have surgery. I mean, your skull, you know, like your scalp hurts and my neck hurt
Right.
because they had to separate out the skin from my neck to run the tube and stuff. But honestly, I mean, my recovery from the brain surgeries was really easy. I mean, I had a little bit of pain, but I was off pain meds within 48 hours.
Okay.
Gastric bypass definitely hurt a lot more. It turns out it hurts a lot more when they're
Really?
messing around with all of your internal organs.
And like they pull out a part of your stomach,
or they
Actually,
pump you full of gas and stuff, because like I didn't
yeah.
have to be pumped full of the gas or anything for any of my other surgeries.
Interesting. And then so did what was I going to ask? So I noticed when you and I were talking, so you had a couple minor complications from the gastric bypass.
Yeah.
What were those?
I was on my omeprazole that was prescribed to me for the 3 months post-op. And within a week of me stopping the omeprazole, I contacted my surgeon's office like, hey, it's kind of hurting. Like my stomach feels like it's hurting when I wake up in the morning and when I lay down to go to bed and when I eat or drink anything. And so they had me come in and they just kind of proactively put me back on the omeprazole. And then I had an EGD done at about 4 months post-op. And when we got the results of the EGD, they said that I had gastritis from what they assumed to be acid in my pouch,
Okay.
or somehow something getting up into my pouch and just causing gastritis. But he also found a small anastomotic ulcer forming where they do the incision from your pouch to your intestines.
Okay.
That where those sutures are and everything is called the anastomosis. And so it's an ulcer that forms there, which is apparently a particularly bad spot because it's the easiest part to perforate.
Well, that sounds fun.
Yeah. So then I started on a drug called Carafate as well. And I have to take that before I eat and in the morning and then at night before bed. So it added a level of complication to eating and drinking because I have to quit drinking for 30 minutes before I take the Carafate, and I can't eat after I take the Carafate for 30 to 45 minutes, and then I have to take my 30 minutes for a meal, and then I can't eat drink for 30 minutes after. So for me to drink water is like a 2.5 hour process every time I want to eat. So my calories are just still a lot lower than what they would like them to be. But we're working on it.
Because you're about what, like 8 months post-op now?
I'm almost 8 months post-op, and my average on calories is about 700 a day.
Okay, that is kind of low for that state.
Yeah. But I mean, it's like 80 grams of protein, 90 grams of protein a day. So they're a little bit better about that. They're just like, protein. And so as of right now, I'm just not really getting any carbs or fat because especially with all the stuff going on in my stomach, I just don't tolerate a lot of foods at all right now. So.
And then but you didn't have to have like a surgery or anything like that.
I haven't yet. I have a follow-up EGD a week from today.
Okay.
To see if the ulcer's healed on the medications and if the gastritis has gone away. And if it has, then we'll kind of form a plan based off that. I'll probably stay on the omeprazole, but I'll probably get to stop the Carafate. For now, if it hasn't, then we will have to talk about other options.
Right. And it's so tough, like when you're on so many different medications, because some medications cause certain side effects, and then it's more medications to offset the side effects of this one.
But then they cause side effects.
Right. And then they cause their own side effects. So I'm curious. So you've lost, I believe it was what, like 125 pounds in the last 8 months.
Yeah, a little bit more. I think by the time I hit my actual 8-month mark, it should be about 130, 135.
Which is absolutely incredible. And considering everything that you've gone through, number one, that is absolutely incredible, because at least even though you're not 100%, you're a lot better today than you were before. And I'm curious,
Oh, yeah.
like since the weight loss, even though I think you've said that the migraine issues have not completely dissipated or gone away. They're still there, but have any of the other issues gone away, like with your knees and your back? And
my knees were getting a little bit better with the weight loss. And then last week I had a rheumatology appointment, and we found out that I've had a couple of, I see an RA for like follow-up because I had 2 positive RA factor tests when I first started complaining about my knees. So they're like, you don't have rheumatoid arthritis, but you might develop it. So just follow someone once a year. So I went in and I was talking to her about stuff, and at my appointment this last week, and she was like, yeah, everything you're describing to me, your RA has started up. So I actually started hydroxychloroquine on Saturday to start trying to treat my RA. So it was getting better until this last month.
awesome. And do they think, like, because when it comes to like rheumatoid arthritis, does diet play a role in like being able to help like reduce like the inflammation?
It does. They typically tell you to go on an anti-inflammatory diet. With everything being so new, I haven't actually done a whole lot of investigating with it, especially because I have food allergies that are severe, and my husband also has food allergies that are severe. So we just haven't tried to figure out what we can change to still be able to eat, because we still have to be able to cook food.
Which one of the reasons I'm so impressed by you is I feel like you have so many different things stacked against you in different areas. And like when you were telling me some of the food allergies that you have and the food allergies that your husband has, and in my head, I'm like, my God, like what else is there? Like what else are you going to throw at this chick that's going to like give her all these complications? Or like, how about any more obstacles we can throw into the mix here? But what I love is, number one, you're not letting it defeat you. Like you might not know all the answers and how to come out the other side of this, but you're still getting up every single day and you're still working through it. And I love that you're very vocal about what you're going through, because like I've seen like on TikTok, there's other people that can relate, that are dealing maybe not with every single issue that you're going through, but I feel like the more vocal you're becoming about it, I don't know about you, but I know that for me, like it's somewhat self-healing knowing that you're not alone. And then 2, if you found like a tip or trick that helps in certain moments or whatever that you can pass on to someone else, it makes you feel really good knowing that you can help someone else. But I'm just curious, like what your mindset is like, day to day.
I mean, like as far as all my medical conditions and stuff like that, I kind of just look at it as like the mindset I've had for years at this point. Like the first year and a half after I got sick, I was bitter. I was angry because I made more than I mean, I didn't make a lot more, but I made probably 15-20% more than my husband, and that income just poof. Gone. And we had just gotten married 3 months before I got sick. And then we, after I lost my job, we had to move in with my in-laws, and I was just bitter. I mean, on top of all that, I was 6 months from graduating when I got sick and with my degree, and I'd been working for that for so long. I started off doing like working full-time and going part-time. And then the last like year and a half, I've been working full-time and going to school full-time. Right. And I was just so angry. But after that, I kind of made peace with, this is my life. There's nothing I can do to change it. Best guess is that everything is related to probably 2 or 3 gene mutations. And I was like, I can't change my DNA.
Right.
So I might as well make peace with it. And so day to day, honestly, at this point, it's just kind of like, this is the hand I was dealt. Let's make the best of it. And I have made a lot of adjustments to, like, especially at home and stuff. Like, I spend a lot of time at home because I've built my environment to be conducive to me.
Right. And I think the hardest thing, like, I mean, to say that any of us are immune from having the rug pulled out from underneath us, like, is impossible. Like, I mean, if 2020 taught us everything, even the most healthiest people, the richest people, it didn't matter who you are, you were all affected by a dramatic change without warning. And like you said, like, I think that we have two options. I think our first reaction is anger and bitter and why me, and, complaining and crying. And then at some point you're like, well, this line of thinking is not really working for me. It's not really making any solutions. And even if you don't know the answers, sometimes just making the decision to find a way to adapt, find some other route, or accept what it is for now, and then, okay, what can I do today to make tomorrow a little bit easier or a little bit better? And that's one thing that I do love about you is you're not you might not be 100%, or you might not be positive 24/7. We're going to have bad days. We're going to have moments of weakness. But what do you think for you? What do you think is like your biggest motivator to stay positive and to stay on track?
I mean, I think it depends on, like, the aspect of my life. Like, as far as, like, all my medical conditions and stuff like that, I mean, one of my biggest things for, like, staying positive and stuff is that my husband has been phenomenal and has, like, I mean, we had a conversation once, and, he said that he doesn't know what he would have chosen if we weren't married yet.
Mm-hmm.
But that he probably would have thought long and hard if all of this was going on before we were married. And I was like, that's completely fair. But he has 100% been there for me and advocated for me and been my cheerleader and sat in the waiting room for, now 3 multi-hour surgeries and taking care of me when I got home. Like, after my brain surgeries, he had to bathe me for multiple weeks.
Right.
And he was just, like, always there and everything like that. So, I mean, that's a pretty good motivator for staying positive and trying to, like, do what I can and everything like that. As far as, like, bariatric surgery and stuff, I mean, for me, I just don't want to waste the tool I was given.
Yes.
Like, more than anything, I don't want to waste the tool I was given. And my goal weight was set just based off what the top BMI weight I could be in the healthy range, so that doctors couldn't tell me it was my weight anymore. Like, that's literally my only reason for my goal weight. I hate BMI, but then doctors can't tell me that I'm too fat.
Right. So it's like, okay, so now what's next? Yeah. This is what you said it was this. We've clearly proven that it's not. Like, what's the next step or whatever?
Yep.
So talking about, like, the gastric sleeve surgery, as somebody who, went through what you went through when it came to food and not being able to eat for long periods of time, and then like overindulging when you were able to have food, how did the dynamic change once you had surgery in regards to your relationship with food now?
I would say my relationship with food actually started shifting a year or two ago.
Okay.
Just because of, like, me developing a food allergy and then my husband developing a food allergy and stuff. Food became a lot less, oh, I just want to eat something, and more, it became more of a, well, we have to eat something kind of thing.
Right.
And while I wasn't really losing weight, I wasn't trying very hard to lose weight either before surgery, but I also wasn't gaining any weight. Like, I stayed the same weight for 4 years, which for me was doing pretty well. I mean, I wasn't gaining anything, so it wasn't that bad. But since surgery, I'd say, like, the biggest thing that's kept me on track is if I want something and it's not going to make me dump, then I just go ahead and get it, because having the thing that I'm craving for one of our itty bitty little meals,
right,
isn't going to derail the whole thing. I just don't have it for every meal until it's gone.
Right.
If I want some chicken nuggets, chicken nuggets actually have a lot of protein. And so I'll go and I'll have, the 3 chicken nuggets that fit in my stomach.
Right.
And then I'll throw the other one away, or I'll feed it to my dog or something.
And I know that there's a lot of people who are avid members of the food police who will tell you that you can't have whatever you want.
Yeah.
And I am, I'm very empathetic to people who do have serious food addictions where some people can't eat those foods because they can't control themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And like there's times where like even like if you have a baked potato and you get it with all of the fixings, and then I've had people tell me like, should you really be eating that? And I'm like, here's the thing, I'm literally going to have 1 or 2 bites. But if I'm going to have 1 or 2 bites, I'm going to enjoy it the way that I want to, because 1 or 2 bites is not going to bring me to 300 pounds. But I'm also making sure that I hit my protein every day. I hit my water. So for me, I never thought of, I don't think I ever really had an addiction to food to the level that other people have where like, but I'm one of those people that if it's in front of me, I want to eat it. If we're sitting in front of the TV with chips, I'm going to eat the whole bag. Not because I have like this incestuous need to eat it, but it's more like just I'm a blind eater.
You zone, that was a lot me too. Like even now, like I've had potato chips since surgery.
Mm-hmm.
Like potato chips aren't as bad as people think they are, but anymore too, just also because of the bariatric stuff. When I get something that's, a bag of potato chips or something, I sit down and as soon as we get home, I weigh out all of them into single serving bags. Same with anything else we get almost. Like I weigh it out as soon as we get home into single servings. That way I can't mindlessly eat anything. Right. It's just already weighed. I grab the individual bag and I'm done. And also then it makes it easy to log.
And I'm the same way because I started using my FitnessPal a lot this year when I did some of the eating challenges that I did, workout healthy challenges. Mm-hmm. And then I would do the same thing. Like I would come home, it said 1 ounce is X amount of calories. So I measured out 1 ounce, put it into a baggie, put it into a pantry so that I knew if I was running out of the house, I could grab that, know exactly what was in it, and then be fine. Because like for me, once the plate is done or once it's done, then I'm done. Like I'm not usually craving more because it's not in front of me. But if you go, oh my God, if you go to a Mexican restaurant and the chips and salsa on the table, even though I've had surgery, I didn't realize how much I was just mindlessly eating. And then like I've had like my couple bites of dinner and I'm like, oh my God, I'm full. I'm good. Everything's good. And then you're shooting this shit and you're talking and people are like, wait, I thought you said you're full. And I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, dude, you're grazing. Like you're just, and it's such second nature that you don't realize that you're doing it. So I've been very good about pushing it away from me, putting a napkin around it. Because even though like a napkin's not going to do very much, I feel like it's this visual out of sight, out of mind, and that helps a lot. So what were some of like what you and I had a very similar NSV that you really enjoyed? What was one of the first? Let me rephrase this. Number 1, what was one of your first NSVs that you had?
I would say one of my first NSVs that like really struck home for me is I had ordered a shirt that showed up the day I had surgery.
Really?
Yeah, it got delayed. It arrived the day I had surgery and I got discharged that evening. Like I got discharged, I think like 2 hours after surgery.
Really?
And so, yeah.
Yeah, that just like caught me off guard. Like you didn't stay a night. You didn't have to do any of that.
Nope.
Holy shit.
I guess they normally keep people for like 4 hours, but they were running behind that day, so they kind of just rushed me out the door. But yeah, I was home. I was home 2 hours after surgery, but there was a package out here, and so the day after surgery, my husband like opened it up for me, and I tried it on. And it was a like exercise tank I'd gotten from Target, and I bought it in the size I thought I was at the time. So I was like, I'm gonna have to be working out after surgery and everything like that. And it was too tight. And like a month and a half later, it fit.
Really?
And I was like, it did, yeah. And I was just like, oh, this is great. And like, then shortly after that, I went to try on my husband, like a couple days after surgery. He's like, I never asked. He's like, what's your, goal? And I was like, honestly, I don't really have like a pound at the time. I didn't have any like pound thing. I was like, but there's a pair of jeans I kept from freshman year of college. I want to fit in those jeans. And I wasn't even 3 months post-op when I tried them on, and they were too big.
No way.
Yeah, I completely overshot and completely missed when I could have worn them.
Which, okay, that's an amazing problem to have, but I can see how frustrating it would be that, like, you have, like, this goal in mind, like, you're visualizing yourself wearing these jeans, and then, like, you're like, okay, I think we're ready. I think we're going to finally fit in them. And you're like, now I'm swimming in them. And you, like, miss the whole goal.
I mean, I moved them, like, 6 or 7 times because I was like, someday I'm going to fit back into these jeans, and then I overshot. And I was a little bit upset.
I would be I'm not gonna lie, I would be kind of disappointed because I think I told you this. I had a friend who had like these size 11 pants, and they're like these red and black plaid checkered pants, like they just scream 70s or whatever. But they had like little bell bottoms, and they were the cutest things ever. But I was a size 20 to size 22, and so she was getting rid of clothes, and I'm like, one day I'm gonna fit into these pants, and I held on to them for like over 10 years. And then eventually in my 30s, I was like, I'm like 350 pounds. I'm never going to wear these. And I finally got rid of the pants. And then within a year, I ended up having the gastric sleeve surgery. And I'm like, I could have fit into them now. And now I'm like kicking myself that I didn't hold on to them.
Yeah. And then, I mean, the most recent one would be that I needed new bras. So I, of course, went to Torrid because that's the only that and Lane Bryant are the only places I could buy bras and try them on in person. And Torrid did not have anything that fit me. They said they didn't carry down to that band size. So our Victoria's Secret's literally across the walkway from the Torrid. So I walked across to Victoria's Secret, and I could fit in their very top size. It was the absolute top size they carried in the store. And I was like, oh my God, yes. On my way out, I saw some lingerie, and I've never bought lingerie in my relationship. I bought some plus size stuff that I found for my wedding, and it did not look good at all. But that's the only lingerie I've ever owned, and I only wore it on my honeymoon once, and that was it. But I saw some lingerie, and it was cute, so I tried it on, and it fit, so I bought it. And I was just like, this is such a bizarre experience. I walked into a store, decided that I just randomly wanted this, and I bought it, and it fit.
Which I like. Okay, was there did it make you, okay, so I'm so awkward. I'm a tomboy. I'm not sexy. Like, did it make you feel sexier?
It did. And that's why I went ahead, and spent the money on it. Like, otherwise I would have never spent that amount of money on it. But I was having a particularly good day that day, and I felt like my migraines and my headaches were like the lowest they'd been in weeks. And so I went to the mall by myself, and my husband wasn't with me, which is rare because normally I have to take medication that makes it so I can't drive. But I had gone and so as soon as I got home, I was like, hey, I got these new bras at Victoria's Secret. You want to see them? Because I've just been showing him, the stuff I get when I get it. And so I showed him the 2 bras. He's like, oh yeah, those look nice and everything. And then I went and put on the lingerie, and I was like, and I came out and I was like, and I got this. And he was like, oh, hello.
Hello there.
And I mean, it made me feel nice. I mean, it made me feel good about myself. And that was probably one of the first times, even since surgery, that I was like, I'm really hot. Like, I'm sexy and desirable. And it was nice.
There's something about, I remember going into Victoria's Secret. I had boobs at like 10 years old. Like I think that the biggest I ever got was like a 48 triple D. Like Lane Bryant was my only option. Like the only place that I could ever go to buy bras. And I remember when I made a vision board before surgery of a future NSV list that I wanted to have. And one of the things I put on there was Victoria's Secret, because I've never been sexy or felt sexy, or I would have never, back then, like when I was in high school in the 1900s, at Victoria's Secret, the highest size they ever had was a double D. They didn't have even triple Ds back then. Yeah. And I was like, there is no way this was ever going to happen for me. So I think it was like 6 months post-op, none of your, like, you don't think about like underwear doesn't fit anymore. Like bras don't, you
Mhm.
lose weight everywhere. And I'm like, they're not gonna have stuff at Victoria's Secret. But I was like, but I wanted to go and at least try. And by then they had some triple D's. It wasn't the same level of selection, because I
Mhm.
was still on the higher spectrum of it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you can buy bras a lot cheaper at a lot of other places. But for me, I was willing to spend the money because I could, because it was a
Yeah.
goal that I've always wanted to do. And there is something about it that just, I don't know what it is. It just boosts your confidence. It just makes you
Yeah.
feel better. And when you feel good, you project that when you're outside, even though you're not walking around in your bra, but there's something that
Yeah.
like I'm wearing a new one today. I just put it on.
Yeah.
But there's something about it that just, it gives you like a more of a pep in your step in your everyday life.
Mhm.
And that's what I absolutely love. So the year is almost up. We're going into, which I can't believe I'm saying this, we're going into 2023.
I know.
Sometimes I still think it's March of 2020. I feel like it's just all been like this bubble. But I feel like you're finally getting to a point where everything's becoming more manageable. At least you know what's in front of you. You kind of have like a set routine now. What are
Mhm.
some things that you're looking forward to hopefully doing in the next year?
I mean, like right now, my biggest goal, which is super funny to me at this point, was I wanted, when I had the surgery, like when I hit about 3 months post-op, I was like, I want to be under 200
Mm-hmm.
pounds by the new year. And then about a month and a half ago, I realized that with my weight loss, it was realistic that I could hit it by Christmas. So then I just, moved it that week to Christmas. And now I'm only 2.5 pounds away from being under 200, and my EGD is a week from today. So I really want to lose that 2.5 pounds before my EGD, because I have to see my surgeon's doing the scope.
Right.
And so I want to be under 200 pounds when he sees me for the scope.
So we're just a couple of pounds away from Wonderland.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's so exciting.
And I was going from weighing like once every like week or two to now I'm like the last like 4 or 5 pounds I've been weighing every day.
I know they say not to weigh every day. When I first had the surgery, I made a rule to myself, because when we get obsessive over the scale, we can set ourselves up for failure. Like it,
Oh, yeah.
and that's one of the reasons why I had issues my entire life. Is the scale doesn't move, you throw in the towel, and you're like, might as well go binge. So I wanted to do everything differently. So when I first had the surgery, I made a rule: I'll weigh once a week on Fridays, and then that's it. You just focus every day on the task at hand, and then I would take measurements once a month. But once I hit my goal weight, I found myself weighing every day, just because then I felt like, you could have like a crazy weekend, or you go out of town, you kind of have like some, you're not as strict. And then if you gain a couple of pounds, it's kind of like this constant reminder, okay, we enjoyed the weekend, now we're getting back on track. But it's been years now, and I still weigh myself every single day. And I've noticed that sometimes the old obsessions can get back in the old patterns, and it can become dangerous. But then it's hard when you're so close.
It is, but like at the same time, this morning I woke up and I was like, oh, I need to let the dog out and I need this other thing, and then I forgot to weigh, and then by the time I remembered, I had already had a protein shake and a smoothie and breakfast, and I was half my water in for the day. I was like, well, I'm not weighing now.
I don't want that thing to go up now.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is I made a video the other day, just like because I didn't think about it. I hadn't hit my water goal for 2 days, so I weighed that day because I've been weighing every day, and I was down like 3 pounds, and I was like, yeah, I'm doing awesome. But then like a day or two later, when I had hit my water goals and I weighed, I was up 2 pounds. And it sent me on a spiral for that whole weekend, because it happened on a Friday. I was like, what am I doing wrong? Why? Because that was the first time I'd seen the scale go up since surgery. I'd seen it like stay the same, but I hadn't seen it go up. And I spiraled for a couple days. And then after like 2 or 3 days, I weighed again and I was back down below that number. But I was just like, hey, if you're dehydrated, don't weigh yourself.
Don't do it. And
just don't.
It's so hard because, people will ask, like, why did I gain weight? There's so many variables. It could be your
Mm-hmm.
hormones. If you had something with a little too much sodium and you're retaining water, or there could be so many reasons for it. But we all do it. We're all victim to it, and it's like when I was doing like the 75 hard. You do 2 workouts a day. You have to drink a ton of water. You have to follow a diet. And then like there was days where I gained weight. And I'm like, this does not make sense. I'm in a calorie deficit. I'm working out. And then it's like,
Muscle.
but then you're building muscle, and then like your body's
Mm-hmm.
shifting, and then like the more it could have to do with it, more protein you're having, or the way that your body still needs time to adjust to all of the changes. So
Yep.
sometimes, kind of like when you're a kid, sometimes you gain weight right before a growth spurt. I've noticed that there were times where I would gain a couple of pounds before you finally break the stall, and you're like, I wish there was like this exact science that we knew exactly what to do to get the results that we want. And it sucks that it doesn't work that way. It's more just kind of like hit or miss. And
Yeah. Well, I mean, everyone's different.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, what works for me isn't going to work for someone else. And, like, even every surgeon's different. Like, everyone I've talked to, because I know that I want to hit, be under 200 by
Right.
the time I go and see my doctor and everything like that. But I also know that if I do get under 200 by the time I go see him, he's going to lecture me, because he has an upper limit of, he doesn't want to see you lose more than X amount per month, because then you can start getting into muscle loss and bone loss and stuff like that. And so he has a lower limit, but also an upper limit. And everyone else is like, oh no, my surgeon's like, lose as much as you want.
Right.
But the more calories I get in, the faster the weight's coming off. Like, because I had so many problems at the beginning
Right.
and everything. Like, even now, I'm 8 months out and everyone's like, oh, this is when it slows down. But the more calories I get in, the faster it's coming off. And I know that he's going to be like, hey, by the way, I said not to lose more than
Right.
10 to 12 pounds a month. And for the last 2 or 3 months, I'm at like 16, 18 pounds a month. And I'm like, I'm going to get chewed out.
Well, hopefully not, because you're still healthier. I mean, like you're not
Yeah.
starving yourself or anything like that. With the issues that with the medication and with the migraine issues, are you able, like, are you able to be active, or is there any kind of fitness regimen that your body can tolerate?
I honestly, I have a gym membership, and that I got through my insurance before surgery, and I started doing that as soon as I was cleared. But then I figured out that the fluorescent lights were triggering my migraines.
Oh, interesting.
So I would go and I'd get like 15 minutes of workout in, and then half my body would go numb. And so it was kind of like, well, I got to leave now. So I started working out at home. I signed up for Apple Fitness Plus because I'd gotten a new Apple Watch. I got a free trial. I was like, okay, we'll try it out. I love it. I
Really?
do Pilates. Yeah, I do Pilates. It's mostly in the floor. But I take muscle relaxers 3 times a day because of some issues I have with just stability and walking and stuff like that. So anytime I do work out, it just has to be planned out really
Yeah.
well. So I have to take my med and then wait the 20, 30 minutes for it to kick in. And then I've got like a 45-minute window where I can work out, where the muscle twitching's controlled enough that I won't fall or hurt myself or something like that. So, I mean, I still can do like, 30 minutes, but that's about the limit.
Yeah.
And then I usually have to go and lay down after that.
But you know what, though, honey? I have to give you kudos, because it's so easy for people to give into whatever their disabilities or setbacks are and just make excuses like, I can't do anything. Even though you might not be able to do the level that maybe you would have liked to at this point, you're still going out there and you're doing something. If your limit right now is 10 to 15 minutes, you're going out there and you're giving it 10 to 15 minutes and you're investing in yourself. And so I think that really says a lot. It's a real testament to your character that you are not defined by these labels that you've been given by doctors or medications and stuff. You're still going out there and you're finding ways to adapt and find a routine, a regimen, a structure that works for you personally. So you smurf and rock for that.
Yeah. And then, I mean, if you're cooking or doing chores or folding laundry or whatever, just like I put on my noise canceling headphones and I just jam out and dance as best I can. I mean, it's almost always in my kitchen, so I can grab a counter if I start to fall or whatever. But like, or I could have my cane or, walker or whatever. But like, you just got to find whatever. And I mean, before I had surgery, I did not work out. I did not do anything. And it's because I was in so much pain and it was so hard for me to move at 330 pounds that I didn't.
Yeah.
But then as soon as I lost the weight I lost between the pre-op diet and then when I was cleared for exercise, like I just physically felt like I had so much more energy. And everyone in my family's like, oh, you must have so much more energy now. Like you can do so much more. I was like, well, I do physically have a lot more energy,
Right.
but I can use about the same amount of energy as I could before I feel like garbage.
Right.
And they're like, oh, so what do you do? I was like, I just lay awake in bed. Like I used to sleep while I was in bed. Now I just lay awake in bed.
Yeah. But yeah, I just absolutely love that. Which I can't. Okay, so I just looked at the time. I can't even believe that we've already gone through an entire hour.
Yeah.
But before we go, what would be some advice that you would give to somebody who is thinking about or about to embark upon the weight loss surgery journey?
I would say two things. Really sit down and do some soul searching and decide whether you are fully committed to this for the rest of your life, because it's not a diet. It's something that you're going to live with for the rest of your life. You are changing your anatomy. And despite what people say, oh, well, this is reversible, well, that's reversible. It might technically be reversible, but it will leave lasting scars on your body, and it won't be the same for the rest of your life. So make sure that's something you want to do.
Right.
Other than that, I would also say, like, there's a lot of us, especially on lives and stuff, that we're sharing our stories, and our stories aren't going to be everyone else's stories. All of ours are unique. And while, you can hear influencers on TikTok or Instagram or wherever, or, Facebook groups say X, Y, and Z, you have to listen to your surgical team. Like, and if you have serious questions about anything, don't go to Joe Bob on Instagram and ask him. You need to contact your surgical team. And that's your point for everything.
Yeah, and I love that you're very vocal on TikTok and you're sharing your story. And I've gotten a lot more into I love joining the lives with you ladies. It's so nice to be part of such an amazing community where we're very supportive of each other, and we all have different journeys, but there are tips and tricks that we can share with one another that help. But like you said, none of us are doctors, and every single one of us could have the exact same procedure with the exact same doctor on the exact same day, time, or have the exact same stats. We're going to have different results. Our bodies are going to react differently. And we might have the same doctor, but he could probably give you different advice than he's giving me, because we're all different. So it's always important, first and foremost, to consult with your doctor. If you're looking for helps with like a recipe or hey, how did you deal with, this? How did you deal with it? What worked for you? I'll share, I'll be as open and honest, but that still might not work for you. So always make sure that you talk to your doctor first. And Paige, like seriously, like thank you so much for being here today. I really, truly appreciate it. You were such an amazing delight. And I hope that you'd be willing to come back on the show again, because I want to be able to update and see how you've been. And I want to know when you've hit Wonderland so that we can celebrate.
I'll message you when I hit it. I'm hoping it'll be this weekend.
I just keep before bed, just keep closing your eyes and visualizing the scale saying like 199 point. I'm going to say 199.6.
But based on like how I've been losing the last couple weeks, I think I'll probably hit it Sunday or Monday.
Okay. I'm manifesting it for you. We're putting it out into the universe. And yeah, I definitely want a message.
Message you.
And to those of you who've been watching, thank you so much for joining us today. You can catch this episode, even if you missed it live, you can still catch it on YouTube and Facebook at Unzipped with Sherry. We're also on Spotify and Apple, also at Unzipped with Sherry. Like I said, I like to make it easy for you guys so that you can come and find us. You can find Paige on TikTok, and I think her name on here, that's your handle on TikTok, right?
Correct. It's rny.page on TikTok and on Instagram. And if you Yeah, on TikTok, if you want to comment on one of my videos and say, hey, follow me back so I can message you, I will totally do that. I just don't necessarily follow everyone because there's a lot of bots.
There's a lot of bots. If you want to be a guest on the show, you can reach out to my website at www.sherryarcuria.com, or you can email me at info@sherryarcuria.com. I feel like I'm a narcissist. Everything just has my name attached to it, which I feel kind of weird. And on that note, I hope you guys all have an amazing week, and we will see you next week.